Hi guys, hope everyone's having an awesome day. It is really nice out. You know what they say, sun's out, guns out. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Anyone that follows the channel a lot knows I'm a pretty big gamer. A big part of my gaming life is RPGs, and this is my top 10 RPG video games. Before everyone starts yelling at me and telling me something's a crappy RPG or not a full-blown RPG and all that sort of jazz. I like what I like. I don't like super in-depth RPGs, guys, but I also don't like just strictly action type RPGs. I kind of like a little mix of both, but you'll probably see on this list I'm more of a mainstream RPG type player. That's just what I like and I always have, and we're going to get right to it. Number 10 on my list is a game that came out in 2011. It's a series that I really cherish, even though they have let out a stinker, and it is Dragon Age Inquisition. This game for me was really fun. I enjoyed that they made this more open world and went with a larger scale game. There was a lot of true fans that pushed back on this, but to me, they moved it closer to a Bethesda type game with bigger open world areas. And don't get me wrong, they filled them with a lot of filler. Not into like fetch quests and like mindless type stuff you're not gonna like. But if you just like exploring and, walking around like you do with Bethesda games, then you're gonna like this. And this is a good game, very visually appealing. I feel they needed to make a game like this after they released Dragon Age 2, because Dragon Age 2 was horrible, guys. It was basically a hack and slash game. They reused like 5 different areas throughout the whole game, and they were tiny. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. EA wanted the studio to punch out a game as fast as they could to capture on the success of Dragon Age Origins. I'm sure it still sold okay, but it did get panned by a lot of critics and gamers. It was just not that great. Inquisition was awesome. Storyline was okay. The main villain was just like a ho-hum standard cookie cutter main villain type guy. That wasn't the draw of this game. Standing around the war table, picking out your quests, where you're going to send troops, kind of like a little mini game within the game. Just talking to your companions. Those were pretty fleshed out, in my opinion. They did bring that back from Dragon Age 1. I really like that part of it. Some spongy aspects to it, especially fighting the dragons. They were long fights, and they had like a million hit points, it seemed like. But other than that, the combat was pretty good. The mages weren't overpowered like they were in Origins and even in Dragon Age 2. So they kind of struck a pretty good balance. Playing this game, I preferred the sword and board type character. I found that the most rewarding. And let your mages and rogues take over the rest. Again, this is a solid 10. It could almost be higher on the list. But there's so many good games, it's hard to make a list of just 10. This is the best-selling game in that series, guys. And after the Veilguard that came out that absolutely bombed, and I just don't have any interest in playing that. It looks way too cartoony and Fortnite-y to me. And that's just my own opinion on that. I'm just not a fan of the art direction they took in it. From the sounds of it, the storylines are pretty ass, too. So I'm going to give Inquisition my number 10 pick. Number 9 pick, I have to go with Mass Effect 2. Now, this game was awesome. This was the first Mass Effect game I played. After I played this, I fell in love with it. I dabbled in the first one. It was a little bit too different for me. I did play the subsequent games after this, and I did enjoy them. I didn't play Andromeda just because I heard it was terrible. It was when BioWare was at its peak. They were making awesome games, cool companions, and the companions had their own little rivalries like Jack and Miranda, and then you had like Garrus, and it was just an awesome game. I like the pop and shoot mechanics, kind of like Gears of War in that aspect. Friends didn't like that. It didn't really bother me. I kind of enjoyed it. But you couldn't really tank. You stuck your head up and tried to be like a warrior. You would get your ass whooped. To the planets and looking for the resources. And yeah, the entire world, I found they fleshed it out really well. It's actually one of those games I really would like to go back and play, because it has been so long since I have played this. I can't remember how many times I've actually played through it. I usually don't be a bad guy in these type of games. I usually am kind of the good-ish guy, not a true white knight, as you would say. Visuals on this, the great storytelling, like the worlds were captivating. The whole thing was just very interesting, and honestly, it was a game I found that I never really had any boring spots with, if you know what I mean. Sometimes you do get bored with cutscenes and traveling to worlds and stuff, or the map might not be the greatest, but I never had this with Mass Effect 2. I honestly thought it was one of the best games they ever did produce. And really, I don't think BioWare is ever going to go back to the glory days, guys. I think it's been bastardized, and I think we're just going to live with our memories of, Dragon Age and Mass Effect and stuff like that. I don't think it's ever going to be good again. Very unfortunate. But for me, Mass Effect 2 is definitely a strong number 9 pick. Red Dead Redemption 2 came out. It was highly successful. I believe it was the second biggest launch in entertainment history at around 725 million. That is crazy for an opening weekend, especially for a video game. It's one of the best-selling games of all time, guys. Sold like 74 million copies, and I believe it was one of the most expensive games to make. And you can really tell why that was, because when you look at the visuals on this, the map, the storytelling, just everything about it, you can tell they poured pretty much all of their resources into this game, and it shows in the final product. For me, Arthur Morgan was a compelling lead character. Not as much as John Marston, but we'll leave that for another day. This game is set before Red Dead Redemption, where Arthur Morgan is running with Dutch and the gang, and John Marston is in it as well. He makes some appearances in that, and I believe you play as John for a couple levels or something too. Honestly, to me, everything about this was an improvement over Red Dead Redemption, the first one. The visuals were better, the map was bigger, the story was great. I don't think the story was better than the first Red Dead Redemption, but this is a solid game, guys. And if you like Westerns, there's not a big selection of them that have come out in the past 5 or 10 years. If you're into those, this is definitely the game for you on this gen. For them ever to top one like this, I don't know what the plans are for any more Red Dead Redemptions. I would really think they would make another one. But Rockstar takes so long to make their games, and they're so expensive and so big. By the time GTA 6 is dropping here, you're going to be looking at years before you see another Red Dead. So if you got an itch to scratch with a Western, this is the one to do it, and that's why it is my number 8 pick. Number 7 on my list, I gotta go with a classic, and it is Fallout 3. This game is what got me started being a Fallout fan. I love this series. Some of the more recent games haven't been quite as good. I did enjoy Fallout 4. I found the story pretty weak in it. The world was really good, though. I liked that part of it. And 76 was good as itch to scratch in the Fallout world, but not having NPCs and stuff really killed it on launch. I just found it made it really hollow. We don't need to get into Fallout 76. I still might go back and play it again just for shits and giggles, though. But Fallout 3 for me, when this game came out, the hype for it on 360, oh my god, it was absolutely insane, guys. I was so excited it was a Bethesda game. I love pretty much everything they make. It was just really exciting watching the press releases and Todd Howard saying this is going to be like Oblivion with guns. And this came out, the music, the atmosphere, just the entire world. It was something totally kind of different for me, even though it was like a Bethesda RPG type game. Going out into a wasteland just gave you a different feel. You made a mistake in this, you were dead. Like, if you ran around a Deathclaw and you weren't a super high level, you were done. You could get in over your head. There wasn't a lot of hand holding in this, I would say. At least it didn't seem to me at the time. A few little things that I didn't like about it. The map I liked, but I just thought it was too green-gray type scale. I understand why they did this. They're just trying to make it look, post-apocalyptic and dreary and sad. I believe they kind of got what they were going for. Gunplay in it was what I would call horrendously bad. It was very difficult to aim on console, I found anyways. I found it kind of forced you to use the VAT system more than a traditional shooter would. But that's okay. It was still an awesome game, and I hear they are doing a remaster of this, and if they are going to do that and send it out, I'm going to be all over that. Fallout 3, number 7. Number 6 on my list, I gotta go with another Bethesda game, and it is Skyrim. Now, this came out in 2011. This is when I was huge into gaming on the Xbox 360, and it did not disappoint. I remember how pumped I was for this coming out. They added some interesting combat features featured in Oblivion. There was the two-handed combat. You'd cast a spell while you're hitting with this one. I really like that aspect of it. Definitely an upgrade visually from Oblivion and Morrowind. Itself was really good. The world was good and immersive. The locations were interesting, although I wouldn't say they were more interesting than the former two games. You can tell they did put a lot of care into this game. The main story wasn't super great. The faction quests and everything were still pretty good, though. The werewolf one was exceptionally well done. Until this day, like, they still are pumping out different versions of this game. I think the legendary one or whatever came out, I got it. Just an overall solid game from Bethesda. And at the time, I remember playing this so much, it was absolutely insane, guys. If you ever have time to check out some of these old RPGs again, I would definitely do it. They have a little more flavor than the newer ones, maybe not as visually appealing, but still just great games. Alright, fellers, we're going to dive into number 5. And number 5 on my list, I got The Great Morrowind. Now, another Bethesda game. You can tell I am somewhat of a Bethesda fanboy. I love their games. Some of the more recent ones have not been the greatest, I will admit that. But back in the heyday, if I could only choose one publisher's games to play, I probably would take Bethesda and their library of games. That's just my opinion. So we're going to jump right into Morrowind here. Now, this was the first time I ever dabbled in a Bethesda game. This was, man, it seems like a long time ago now. Back in the original Xbox, I remember popping this in, being in awe that you could pop a game in on one disc and have this giant open world. There wasn't really a lot of hand holding in it. You know, you woke up on the boat and it was creaking and the guy's like, blah, 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 make whatever. And then you get up and then you basically walk in this little village and it's like, well, there you go, have fun. And you just kind of found your own way by exploring and walking around, and there was no fast travel in this, guys, other than from city to city, and you had to pay to go on these big stilt striders, they called them. And yeah, you could only fast travel from city to city from what I remember. The rest of it, you had to walk, and walk you did, man. And the damn cliff racers would chase you. Still remember the sound. They just sounded like a seagull or something. It was just so annoying, and they would chase you, and you couldn't just keep walking. You had to literally stop, wait for them to come down, kill them, and those things were the bane of my existence, honestly. But yeah, the game itself, the dialogue, the story, the main villain, Dagethur, just such a great game. Oh, you could choose to be a thief and steal. There was consequences to everything. It was one of those games that's still in the old-fashioned way. You pretty much had to read everything. It wasn't just talking NPCs and stuff. You'd have to pull up the menu and talk to them and read what they're saying. And I really liked it, guys. I have such fond memories of this game, man. And even today, I think it's what really got Bethesda going and started on their way with things. Well, they developed stuff before this, but this is what really put them on the map. And yeah, just an overall excellent experience, guys. If you have time, definitely check this one out. So after Fallout 3 came out to the huge success it was, I think this is where Bethesda started to get overwhelmed and they started outsourcing more to studios. And this pick for number 4 for me has got to be Fallout New Vegas. Now, this game is one of my favorite games of all time. Absolutely amazing. The story was epic. And as I said, Bethesda didn't do this game. They got Obsidian to do it. If you're familiar with the Outer Worlds and some other stuff, Obsidian does quite a few different things. The developer, they're not too in-depth. They're not like crazy detailed RPGs. But they really picked up the mantle for Fallout, and they really made it way better. And honestly, they did do a better job at Fallout than Bethesda did. If you were like me, you woke up at the Doctor Shack and you meandered through the wasteland. I really like how they went with more of a deserty type theme on this. You know, you went to Vegas, you went to California. Just an awesome game, guys. The story in this was way better than Fallout 3. And I don't want to make any spoilers in case you haven't played the game, but by now pretty much everyone does. But just dealing with Dr. House and the arc of the story was very well written. Locations were interesting. I really like just dressing up as the Wastelander type guy with the leather trench coat and the friggin' helmet. That is so awesome. The music was fantastic, and they really did make the gunplay much more enjoyable in this, and that was one of the biggest things for this game. It wasn't as clunky as Fallout 3. They really refined it. They made it so you didn't really need to use VATS if you want to, and that's what I liked about it. You know, they sold about 11 million copies of this. It was a huge success. He did cement Fallout as one of the kings in the RPG genre. I really think they need to get back and focus on an awesome single player for this. Whether Bethesda outsources it to like an Obsidian or another studio, they need a new Fallout game that is a single player Fallout experience. And that is why New Vegas is number 4 on my list. Really, I'm noticing a trend here. A lot of these RPGs came out within like a 5-6 year window, and this is to me when gaming was at its peak. And like I've said to you guys, the Xbox 360, PS3, Wii was the peak of gaming in my opinion. This generation was the best. They had the best library of games, and it just seemed like it was the perfect time for all these studios to make these epic games. And that being said, I gotta go with a classic Western here. Number 3 on my list is Red Dead Redemption, the original one. And I gotta tell you, this was one of my first kicks at the can for a Rockstar game. I think I might have played some of the really early ones, but not a lot. I wasn't into Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that. So when I popped this in, just the cutscenes, you know, being John Marston in this Western world, I really enjoy Western movies. So for me, this was a perfect fit. It was pretty much an open world, you know, go anywhere you want kind of thing. The map was blocked off at the first part of the game. I remember going to the border of the Rio Grande or whatever and trying to cross the tracks, and you couldn't. And so I remember coming back and getting attacked by the wildcats and stuff. And once you found your way in this game, man, it was just so good. You know, it was the classic left trigger shoot mechanic that they use on both the Red Dead games. Music was on point. The scenery was epic. You know, riding through the desert at night, whether it was be on a stagecoach or a horse, just the vistas. You just looked at them with awe. To me, the main protagonist, John Marston, was probably one of the best characters ever done in a video game. And I don't want to spoil anything if people haven't played it, but I remember sitting around with my friends back in the old days on the 360, and I think I was the first one to finish the main storyline. And then I waited because one of my friends was about an hour away from finishing it. And then we kind of waited for everyone else to finish it. And then, yeah, we're a bunch of like a little school-age girls just clucking like hens about it. It was absolutely insane, guys. It's a wild experience. And then I will add the expansion came out for this, the Undead Nightmare. It put zombies and stuff in it, and it was an awesome extra story to add on to it. And it was honestly one of the best DLCs I've ever played. If you have a chance to play this game, definitely check it out. I got to give it to this one. It's number 3 on the list. Awesome game. All right, guys, we're up to number 2 here. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. There's no doubt about this. I got to give number 2 to Dragon Age Origins. This is a BioWare classic. The DLC for it was awesome, and it was probably one of the best written games I've ever played. I will admit the graphics were behind. By the time this game came out, the graphics already were pretty dated on it. But you know what? Graphics aren't always the main thing in a game. And even the combat was not that great on it. I usually took a mage in this game because they were overpowered compared to the other classes. And I just liked being back, casting your spells, and kind of, you know, controlling the troops and stuff and watching everything that was going on. It was just an awesome experience. Going through the story, they might be considered a little cliche, but it was just the ambiance of it. It's so hard to explain. The background music, the companion chatter, meeting your new companions, and each companion you met, you dealt with their story, and everyone had an awesome story background, and it was just such a well-written, I'm almost going to say masterpiece. Story is obviously what made it for this game, and this is when BioWare was really doing well as a studio. They were putting out awesome games, you know, the quality was good, and then they made Dragon Age 2 in like 18 months, and it was an absolute stinker. You know, they got caught up. I think EA bought them and probably demanded that they put out another game to capture on this success. But to me, Dragon Age Origins is one of those games for a studio that's like lightning in a bottle, and it's really hard to capture that again. From what you've seen that's come out from BioWare in the past few years, they're never going to get this lightning in a bottle again, guys. The studio's not the same. They don't have the same writers, you know. All the leads are gone from these olden days, so very unfortunate. If you have time to play this, I would definitely suggest playing it. It plays well on a controller on the consoles. If you're a PC person, yeah, I would fire it up on the PC. Probably looks a little bit better on that. You can get it super cheap anywhere, whether it's disc or digital. Give her a try, guys. You won't be disappointed in the story. I gotta give number 2 to Dragon Age Origins. Now, to my longtime subscribers, you probably know what the answer to the question is. What is the number 1 game of all time? For anyone new here, I'll say I'm a huge Bethesda fan, and I gotta give the number 1 RPG of all time to The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. This is my favorite game of all time. It also happens to be an RPG, and in my opinion, I think this is the best commercial RPG ever made. I'm going to tell you why. This game, to me, is one that can appeal to both fans of the casual RPG experience and a little bit more of a hardcore experience. They still had the potion making, the spell crafting, the enchanting, all of that stuff that, you know, like a more hardcore audience would expect, but they didn't make it so difficult that a new player couldn't understand how to do it. And I think this is really why it made it such a huge success and it captured such a wide audience. You know, Morrowind was a little less forgiving, I would say a little more difficult in most aspects of the game. They made it more mainstream. You know, you could fast travel if you found a location. They made it more user-friendly. Definitely the cities and the overall map design was much better in this than Morrowind, in my opinion. And it was made more in a classical fantasy style where you had, like, castle cities and, you know, the grand churches. And that's what I liked about them both. They felt like a completely different experience to me. Don't get me wrong, this game had its quirks. You know, it had the classic Bethesda bugs. They didn't have a lot of voice actors. They couldn't cram all that onto a disc, unfortunately, at the time. If you get the remastered one, I've played it. You added more voice actors to it to mix it up a little bit. I really didn't mind having a limited number of voice actors. I'm glad they went that way and put more thought into the actual world itself. You know, the dungeons, some of them are similar. They're not the greatest. If you wanted to just roam the countryside, you know, join some factions, you know, do whatever the heck you wanted, this was the perfect game for that. You could get lost for like hundreds of hours in this game just puttering around, looking for locations, picking up stuff. And to me, it was just a great time to be a gamer, guys. Like I said, they had this 5 or 6 year window where a lot of these games came out, and it was just, you know, you never didn't have anything awesome to play in this time. It was the best time to play, guys. It really was. I would definitely go back and play some of these games because they're absolute masterpieces. This is back when games still had a lot more care and thought put into them, and you could tell the studios weren't necessarily these big bloated machines, but it was starting to get on the cusp of that. They really did care about the product they were putting out. If you have time to check this out, I would check this out, or I would get the remaster if you're on Game Pass. Definitely do that, guys. It's nice having some up-res graphics. They didn't go too wild with the remaster. I give them credit. They just polished it up a little bit, and yeah, give her a try. You won't be disappointed. This is the best RPG of all time, and in my opinion, the best game of all time, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. On that note, the best part of these games, you could literally go out and buy yourself an Xbox 360, pop any of these games in, they will work, you can play them, and you can probably buy them all and the system for under $100, to be perfectly honest with you. I would definitely do that. You know, it's time to get back into some of these retro games, play them again. Everything doesn't always have to be new. Sometimes going back and playing these old games are much more rewarding. And for me, they take me back to a time that was a little more simpler in life. Not that I would change anything. And they can really take you back to a time in your life where it was probably more simple. You didn't have as many responsibilities as an adult. And these games, for me, they just take you back to a wonderful time for gaming and in life in general. Just playing video games with your friends, hanging out, having a good time. And on that note, I gotta skedaddle. I got some errands to run. I got some work to take care of, guys. As always, I love making these videos. I will do my best to get some stuff out in the summertime. As I said, it's going to be pretty busy here. I appreciate you guys sticking around. I know everyone's getting geared up for summer holidays. Comment and subscribe if you like the content, if you have any input. I know I skipped over World of Warcraft and all this stuff, but this is stuff that I played, guys. And I'm more of a mainstream kind of gamer, and that's just the way it is. I'll see you in the next one. Everyone have an awesome day. Peace.